Okay, sit down. The speech may suck. You're like, get off the stage. And I have to say, Sarah, it's really not fair. Like, how can a 17-year-old do that? So it's a really tough act to follow. But you gotta love America. They won't give me a valid green card or a valid passport. And I don't know if you know this, undocumented immigrants actually can't drive, can't apply to get driver's licenses in this state. I don't know if you knew that. So I can't get a green card, I can't get a passport, but they keep giving me awards. But this is a tremendous honor coming from a tremendous organization with a tremendous history. Speaking of history, I was reading up on some of the past recipients of this award. Attorney General Eric Holder, Bishop Gene Robinson, and one of my idols as a writer, Tony Kushner. I'm a huge theater nerd. As a high school student, as an immigrant kid from the Philippines who really wanted to swallow everything America, I was obsessed with Angels in America. I read it like it was some sort of Bible. And I remember when I was, 17, reading at the public library the script. And there were so many bombs in the script that he just keeps dropping at you. And one of the bombs is, I'll never forget this quote, "The white cracker who wrote the national anthem knew what he was doing. He set the word free to a note so high nobody could reach it." I had no idea what a cracker was. I asked the librarian, Mrs. Wade, and then I found out that you don't call people that word. That's not a nice word to call people. But I would argue that what we are living through right now, the fight for immigrant justice, the fight for LGBTQ rights, the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of that is really the struggle to reach that high note of freedom. In writing of the play, Tony Kushner wrote that the question he was trying to ask himself as he was writing the play was, how broad is a community's embrace? How wide does it reach? In some ways, I've been asking that same question since I came out as gay when I was 18 years old, but also when I came out as undocumented when I was 30 years old, and started an organization called Define American. Check it out, defineamerican.com. I can't tell you how many times I always get asked by journalists, what was harder, coming out as gay or coming out as undocumented? I can never really answer the question. That's just like asking me which arm is stronger and which arm I can't do without. But what I always say to people is that, we're actually not coming out. We're just letting people in. And at Define American, when we say we let people in by telling the most accurate, most complex stories of who the 43 million immigrant population in this country really are, 11 million of whom are here illegally. So it's about the stories we tell in the news media. It's the stories we tell in the television shows and the movies we watch. One of the things I'm proud of right now is in Hollywood, they can't have a television show or a movie with an immigrant or immigrant storyline without contacting Define American. We have now planted our flag. Because we understand, and I know in this room who grew up when Ellen was on the cover of Time magazine, when Will and Grace was the #1 show on television, when Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, the first version, led to so many uncomfortable conversations with college dorm mates about how to dress, that in this country, you cannot change the politics and a policy of an issue until you change the culture in which people talk about the issue, right? Love is love has been really the rallying cry of the LGBTQ movement. I would argue in the immigrant rights movement, family is family, right? And in this country of countries, in a country that likes to call itself a nation of immigrants, unless you're a Native American whose land was taken, unless you're an African American who were brought to this country by force, your roots are immigrant. Before there was any border patrol, before there was any green cards, before any visas were needed. I love Bill O'Reilly. I've been on his show a few times. I think of him as the cranky Irish uncle I never had. And it always fascinated me when Bill O'Reilly would say on television, my great-great-grandparents did it the right way. Wait a second, Bill, what right way? Was there a visa process we didn't know about after the potato famine wiped out Ireland? What kind of visa process through Ellis Island happened, right? And as we live through the most anti-immigrant era in modern history, the only analogous era was really the 1920s, about 100 years ago, when for the very first time this country, our country, passed emergency legislation to establish a quota system favoring the British and the Germans over the Polish, the Italians, and the Greeks, and countries we deemed to be undesirable and inferior. Did they not have pasta and pizza? How did that? So as we live through this moment, I think the question is, how wide and deep do we define American? Whom do we include? How do we welcome people? Who gets to feel at home? So home, the concept of home, is something I've been really obsessed about. A few days after Trump was elected president, the building manager of the apartment I was living in downtown LA said, this guy was usually very supportive of me. He would text me whenever he saw me on CNN or Fox News or whatever. He contacted me a few days after the election and he said, "Hey, Jose, we're not sure we can protect you if ICE showed up in the building. So you may want to move out." And it was pretty jarring, because I was paying rent. It was expensive. And I've always wanted to have one of those Frasier-like apartments since I was a kid. And that's what the apartment I had, and I really loved it. But then the moment he said that, one of my lawyers said to me, "Well, the man has a point. It's not a good idea for you to have a permanent address in case ICE came trying to detain and deport you." So in February 2017, I moved out of the apartment. I packed everything up, everything I own, and everything I put in storage, and I ended up writing this book. And I haven't had a place since. I still don't have a place. I'm just sleeping at Airbnbs, hotel rooms, and friends' extra spare bedrooms. And trying to figure out what home means to me. The book is really more about what I refer to as psychological homelessness. And in writing the book, my editor asked me to list the top 10 most painful experiences of my life, which is like horrible. And then I realized after I listed all 10 of them that everything was either about lying, passing, or hiding. I'm saying that to a room with many, many LGBTQ people, and I think we all know what it means to lie and pass and hide. But that was what the book was all about. And then when I was writing the book, I started thinking about the fact that there is no passing alone. There's a chapter in this book called Strangers. I'm going to read a part of it for you. Because the reality is, at every challenging, complicated, and complicating juncture of my life, getting to college, getting a job, getting a driver's license so I could have a valid proof of identification so I could get a job, keeping the job, a stranger who did not remain a stranger saved me. I use that word deliberately because that was what each of them did, even if they didn't know what they were doing. Saved. They saved me. After the woman at the DMV found out that my license was fake, she said, "This is fake, don't come back here again." After I told my high school choir teacher that I couldn't go to Japan for the spring tour because I don't have the right ID, the next day she told the entire class that we were gonna go to Hawaii instead. She's amazing, Mrs. Denny. When I was hired at the Washington Post in 2004, right after 9/11, and you can't really be working in Washington, D.C. without any sort of ID, I thought I had the word illegal tattooed on my forehead. And I got hired in June 2004. By October 2004, I had to tell somebody. So I picked this guy named Peter Pearl, bought him a nice, caramel macchiato, sat him on a bench, and told him about every lie about the fake driver's license, the fake social security card, all of it. I expected him to report me to HR so I could get fired. You know what he said instead? He said, "You make so much more sense now." And then he said, "Don't tell anybody else. This is now our shared problem." So when I had to cover Sarah Palin in Indiana, I would call Peter and I'd be like, "Peter, what if someone in the secret, someone in the security asked me where I was from? Jose, you worry too much. When I got assigned to Hillary Clinton to cover her campaign in Ohio, and there were Secret Service agents everywhere, I'd call Peter, Jose, you worry too much, man. Enjoy the plane. When I ended up winning a part of this Pulitzer, I was like, wait a second, the valid Social Security number is invalid. Isn't the Pulitzer people gonna know that? Jose, you just won, congratulations. You know, I'm saying that because I wonder how many other Peter Pearls are doing exactly what he did for me all across this country. I would imagine that there are many Peter Pearls in this room. And thankfully, Peter Pearl taught me the meaning of the word mensch. And I would argue that we need more mensches all across the country. And what I know for sure, right, is that all of these Americans, all of these strangers all across the country have allowed people like me to pass. They say there's 11 million of us who are here illegally. I would actually argue there's way more than 11 million if I just counted all the white people that I meet at Starbucks. Some here in Boston who are Irish, who feel the need to buy me an iced coffee, and I tell them, no, I can afford it. And then I ask them, hey, you know, what about coming out as undocumented? We can help you. Go to Define American, we'll share your story, and we'll get undocumented Irish, Italian narratives out there on television. Oh, we're not ready yet. Okay, well, when they're ready, I'll be ready. Because as someone who's come out of the closet twice in my life, and I have nothing more to share, coming out once, and as many people in this room know, we can't force people to come out. When they're ready, right? And guess what? I'm waiting for you. And back to the question that I was asking, you know, how broad is a community's embrace? You know, I would actually argue that America, you can tell the history of this country through the history of all the people who have tried to pass. That America has been a continuous history of people who keep trying to pass. Each group trying to reach the highest note of freedom for themselves. So when I think about how broad is a community's embrace, I'm thinking about the fact that it's broad enough that this room of people see it fit to make room for someone like me. So thank you for that. As I said, I don't really have a house right now. I'm traveling with just one carry-on suitcase, which is pretty, I'm in the middle of a book tour. I have like 25 more dates to go. For a gay man to have one carry-on, that's pretty impressive. So I actually don't have any space for this award in the carry-on. So Sarah, can you come up for a second? Sarah, come up. So, and I'm saying this as I'm flashing the donation cards that I'm sure all of you all have filled out. Until I get a place, I think you should keep it. And you know, if they arrested me and deported me, it'd be worth a lot of money, right? And then you can give it back to GLAAD. Because the reality is, when we say, you know, we heard there that, that we are indeed the history we make. I am so proud of you for the history you're making at 17 years old.
Thank you.
So, keep it for now. Thank you for having me here. Thank you. All right, come on, let's go ahead and